This real-side experience would begin with my direct, simulated interjection into affairs that involved what appeared to be a vast space fleet. Little impressions were revealed as to the purpose of the fleet, or indeed its intended destination, other than the overall impression being that the intent of the fleet, or rather the body types that manned it, was not ill-intended. Very possibly then a fleet that was part of the inbound to Earth armada, an armada comprising of all manner and variety of stepping up and becoming more aware body forms, whose chosen assistance, life and awareness beneficially speaking, involves a first contact scenario with humanity, and ideally to bring the human species into the growing confederation of the stepping up assorted alien species, affording then a mechanism of additional mutual support for all those, including then humans, on their respective processes of awareness. The space fleet was of a curious design, rather than comprising of separate craft which were distinguishable from each other, such as is the case with the alien armada. Every craft were identical, and were as though attached to each other. Each individual ship was of a design that I can best describe as being a kind of a translucent cube, and as every cube of the fleet were attached, the result was an extremely long rectangular cuboid stretching many miles in length, and this was then the means by which the fleet would traverse space, wherever it was they were bound for, very likely Earth, to perhaps rendezvous with the other Earth-inbound alien armada. The cube ships were capable of independent flight, but as though only across very limited distances, the species occupying the cubes, which became as this giant rectangular cuboid, would in fact be a variety of stepping up reptilian, a testament once again as to the sheer volume and variety of body types deciding at this time to begin their processes of awareness, including many of the species notorious for being the intergalactic villains, such as the various expressions of reptilian, those responsible for all the dastardly situations and species suppression in this creational realm, etc. It would seem that I wasn't simply observing proceedings or engaging with the reptilians, whose fleet of cube ships this was, but was in the capacity of as though the admiral of the entire fleet. This wouldn't be, as can sometimes be the case, a deceptive ruse, an infiltration, or opposing as one of the beings in the experience for whatever purpose such might serve, as I was in my usual human form, and this was my position, orchestrating and organizing these reptilians and their fleet. Beside me would be the only reptilian of the fleet present with me in this experience, for he would be as though the second in rank to myself. We both were stationed on the command deck, and so he would provide the only visual of the particular reptilian species that this fleet comprised of. He was very large, green-scaled, with a tail, and among the various reptilian species, it is generally the scale coloration or the head design that sets them apart and allows for the ability to differentiate between species. For his head, and that then of the entire species of reptilian the fleet comprised of, would be very much that of a dinosaur, as though that of a walking bipedal T-Rex. As I was managing the fleet, another rectangular cuboid would enter the scene, representing still further reptilians of the same species, with the same design of spacecraft, comprising also of many individual cube ships connected together. I would coordinate with the admiral or captain of this new fleet, as though revealing our intended destination and extending the offer that they join us. This suggested as though not all of this particular reptilian species were at that moment stepping up and soon to be part of the inbound to Earth armada, and so this would be the opportunity I now extended to them. Each individual reptilian of the second fleet would then decide if they would set intent overall with the real purpose of his recognition and agree to assist in this earthbound and in assistance of humanity capacity. And as I announced this opportunity to the second fleet, so certain of the reptilians manning the cubes would agree and accept this option, disengaging from their position as a part of the second rectangular cuboid, and become a part of the cuboid fleet I was overseeing. Not all would agree, however, content to remain immersed with their personal self-consciousnesses, or perhaps stepping up, but not desiring to assist or contribute as part of the Earth First Contact initiative option. But overall, the cuboid fleet I was in command of was far larger than it had been with the new additions, the second fleet far smaller, which then would depart. Its destination would lie elsewhere. And now I would broadcast our intended destination to all of the now expanded fleet I was commanding, and although I fail to remember all I said, and including the destination somewhat exasperatingly, as I said, impressions were we were plotting a course for Earth to rendezvous with the other assorted alien craft of the overall armada. In a following unrelated scene, I would find myself at a kind of a technological broadcasting station. I was in the company of another individual that, although my personal self didn't recognize, was in fact Mexican, so perhaps a stepping up Mexican that has as yet to make their presence known on the physical level. The broadcasting station would be the property of the dark forces, and we had somewhat infiltrated it and were using it to transmit a signal. For this particular station had been abandoned, for whatever purpose it was used for when it was in operation, and we had broken in and were intending to use it as a means of presumably a contact with other beings, spacecraft, planets, or bases. Perhaps the station was in a key location which afforded ease by which contact with certain beings, their planets, ships, or bases could be so. Very little was afforded by way of impressions as to the particulars, but as the real awareness was orchestrating affairs, a real awareness that is part of the isness everything reality, which then permeates through all consciousness affected form and feature, so every idea is available to the real awareness, the ability and know-how to operate alien technology included, that which absent of the real awareness creational oversight would the personal self alone be unable to accomplish such, unless I had developed such skills in my current lifetime, and such is then available to the personal self. So it was that the real awareness would operate through the simulated avatar and ensure that whatever we were doing, the Mexican and I, would be successfully executed. As I said, it seems we were sending a transmission signal for whatever reason we were doing so. Perhaps more may be revealed at a later moment. Maybe we were even assisting in coordinating the various parts of the alien armada, as many other independent fleets are joining with the armada as revealed in the previous scene. And perhaps then this scene is related to the previous one in fact. But despite the Dark Force broadcasting station being abandoned, but functional as it seemed, our presence there had alerted elements of the Dark Forces. For now, various flying saucer-shaped craft were entering the scene. Their objective seemed to be to destroy not only the Mexican and myself, but the very broadcasting station we were utilizing, as though they recognized the strategic position the station occupied and had elected to render it useless. The Mexican would panic. He would attempt to find a means of vacating the station, for there were underground chambers that connected to it, and if accessed, so we would emerge at another position onto the surface far from the station. We would find the entrance to the underground escape tunnel, but alas, it seemed as though it had been either filled in or had caved in long ago, and would not then provide a viable means of extracting ourselves from this predicament. As the Dark Force alien ships began raining down a laser fire upon the station. On the real side, we never are resigned to what has been decided in a consciousness as effected means of a point-to-point travel across multi-dimensional creation, that we may use such, if available, the escape tunnels, the portals, the spacecraft, as by doing so it adds to the adventure and renders the experience more memorable on waking. The real awareness is through all consciousness ideas as they affect into every dimensional position, world and circumstance, as I said, and can simply extract the simulated body form by severing agreement to the idea that is effecting as the environment, dimension, or world the simulated avatar is in, and then lock in agreement with another idea that has the simulated forms reinserted in an entirely different position. As such, we can be transported effortlessly anywhere throughout multi-dimensional creation on the real side. But perhaps my panicking Mexican associate was unaware of this, as I then proceeded to assure him that we were in no peril. Perhaps we may have been in danger if we harboured agreements with the Dark Force agents that they could annihilate us with their laser blasting craft, as everything we experience is based on agreements we have a consciousness installed, and including the ideas that are the abilities of others to harm or destroy us. But even were these agreements present where the alien ships could eradicate us, then in such circumstances a tactical withdrawal is prudent. The real awareness extracts the simulation inserted body forms, and we are removed from harm's way. I would lead the terrified Mexican outside the station, for seemers the personal self was to be shown the visual of the craft, and also would I be afforded then the environment we were in. The station was positioned within a barren, rocky area, impressions suggesting it was a moon base of some kind, wherever in creation it was, and the dark force ships were indeed saucer-shaped, as I said, very large, ominous, with sleek silver metal surfaces. The station now practically in ruins, but we had managed to broadcast the signal we desired to transmit before the station became unusable. Several of the craft would disengage from the blasting of what remained of the station and zero in on our location, and seizing the Mexican by the arm, so I not only was extracted from the scene, but he along with me. As I said, we had been successful in our endeavour, though the station now would be of no further use, but the dark force's attempts to prevent us from using it and to destroy us had failed. In the next scene I would find myself in the presence of a very powerful being. He had developed his consciousness in such a way that effected from it was a body form with remarkable and extensive capability, that he could bend the very simulated environments he was in as he saw fit. He would be considered then along the lines of a magician, but specifically a black magician. That although he wasn't affiliated with the dark forces in regards to their overall desire to maintain their simulator power positions through the agreements they have via their relentless controlling methods and mechanisms, he was still a being that operated in destructive ways and in the abuse of others, this being then his primary thrill-seeking proclivity. Our primary real side objective is to approach all beings and body forms, extending them the opportunity of the ears, the new connection to the true reality, as despite the choices individuals make, regardless of how abrasive and destructive they may be, all consciousness personal selves are operated in fact by a real awareness, with the same is recognizing imperative ultimately, even as the personal self may be unaware of this. And with beings that have developed themselves to be in possession of extreme capability, or those that have and also are in positions within the dark force control circles where they can be very influential, so it makes sense to at least attempt to approach them, giving them the opportunity to step up, and they then decide from there. This being wasn't operating within the dark force controller systems, as I said, but undoubtedly he would have reach and influence, as through his black magic abilities he had rendered himself practically without bounds or limits. In the very least, his extraordinary powers could be a valuable asset if he chose to step up and assist the guides and DUANE with their galactic projects, saving the Earth, etc. He seemed to be humanoid, though there was something odd about him appearance-wise, as though certain features of his form made no sense to my personal self. He was elaborately dressed in multi-coloured robes, and despite being of a generally ill-intended persuasion, he was agreeing to at least assist in whatever capacity he could, which would be quite extensive given his magical abilities, but only if I adhered to what he desired in return. for he wanted to bestow his tremendous powers upon me, that I be equally as magically adept as he was, and in return he would then agree to assist DUANE and the guides. Impressions revealed there was a catch, for the real awareness would as though read the idea intense behind the surface front of the situation, that if I allowed him to make what were effectively alterations to my consciousness, that effected as a body form now imbued with his powers, I also would be linked to him, in that potentially through this link he could be in a position of manipulation, as though my consciousness irrevocably tied to his, but his personal self calling the overall shots, as it were. What he didn't perhaps realize was that regardless of the design of the consciousness, irrespective of if it is able to be controlled by another, perhaps say through technology, or through being as part of a hive mind species like the reptilians, or in this case a bond forged through the accepting of this magical gift that would render my consciousness more so under his dictates and control, as the process of awareness is a facing and releasing of all ideas of the consciousness, we not only are ever more so moving into positions where, regardless of how the consciousness is designed, or if it is being controlled and manipulated by others, we are becoming increasingly detached from it, and therefore aside from any influence that can be exacted through the consciousness. And besides, any agreements we take on, we also can sever, if what is effected from such proves to be restricting and not making sense in regards to life and awareness. We can tear up the contracts as swiftly as we forged them. And so I would agree to his proposal, and perhaps he may not even hold up his end of the bargain. He may not decide to assist the guides and DUANE, but simply have taken this opportunity to trick an individual on their awareness process, for the purposes of then presenting as a means of disruption through the control he thinks he would have over my consciousness personal self. For if another can decide the ideas and intents generated through the personal self-consciousness, they may well choose to create those that are far from intents set with the ears. But as I said, I had an advantage through the real awareness I recognize as able to stand in the nowness of, via an is recognizing intent and focus, that the agreement could be severed at any moment, and if he abused this control he would have over my consciousness, or I simply decided differently at a certain moment, so would the agreement be terminated. I would give him a chance then, regardless of him not mentioning the hold he would have over my consciousness, for evidently he couldn't proceed without my agreement that he could. For we all are the deciders of our experiences, and unless we harbour agreements, conscious or subconscious, that others can impact us the way they desire, they are unable to, unless we extend a conscious agreement permitting that they can. And maybe this was his game, to tempt individuals with magical powers, that they may receive them, but now they are a part of a collective consciousness he manages and dictates, creating for himself perhaps a steadily growing army of mind-controlled magical minions. He would proceed, and although what transpired made little sense visually to my personal self, the simulation of it rather nonsensical, comprising of a manifesting geometry, various nuances of a colour, and that there were seemingly 2 stages to the process of him imbuing me with the magical ability he had. Impressions revealed he had made alterations to my consciousness in such a way that effected now would be a body form with the same abilities that he had. If this was only other dimensionally, or would manifest physically in some shape or form, wasn't revealed. Impressions also revealing that yes, he had established a kind of link with my consciousness. He was in a position to control it theoretically, but with the real awareness I was in a connection with, through my ears recognizing intent established. So, as I said, he wouldn't have the manipulative ability over my consciousness. As he has with others, he also may have extended the same offer too. No impressions would I receive that he intended to abuse this potential manipulation of my consciousness position, or if he even would assist DUANE and the guides, as per the deal, but as I said, I would give him the chance, knowing that if taking such an idea on proves in any way controlling, limiting, or restricting, then the agreement that effects it will be terminated.
Okay, Kevin, that was terrific. Yes, that was really, really good. And when I had the experience, I felt all the energy through it, so it's taking part in it. And what's interesting too, as you have this experience taking on what he would be sharing with you, you also have the opportunity with that to neutralize all of it. You see, so again, it's very, very interesting. So yeah, all you can do is give people the chance, test them, see what they do, because again, everyone has free will. And they're given the opportunity, and this is a huge journey, so that's just a little tiny step. And yes, you can back off at any time, and if you need help, there's always help, so it's all okay. So we face things, we're the risk takers. Yeah, this is really cool. So this is what it takes because of what's going on to get things going so that we have this adventure, because Reavers and the Real Guides, they like this adventure too. They want it to happen with all of us involved, because again, this is how we wake up, just like parents with their children. They put them through a lot of experience so that they're able to function in the environment they're in. And so ours is a vastness that is endless, which is so cool because it's all about awareness. Yes. Thank you so much. Another great adventure. Thank you, Kevin.